it's kind of like a detective story. Something has gone deeply wrong in this factory, and your job as chief executive is to figure out, eventually, kind of who done it, but even before that, to figure out what are you going to ask of whom.
In a plant of the General Shoe Company, it has come to the attention of the chief executive that many of the piece workers throughout the plant are in the habit of discontinuing their work 3/4 of an hour before closing time. The condition has become acute at the present time, April 1919, because the company has more orders than it can fill.
The first Harvard Business School case study was the General Shoe Company, published in 1921. It was the end of the progressive era, so a time of deep unrest when the country was struggling with industrialization, urbanization, government corruption, immigration, and large industrial concerns, particularly in, for instance, railroads or steel, had taken over entire industries, and the idea of management as a profession was very new. The school was a nascent enterprise. It was 13 years old. No one really knew how to teach business. We didn't know what we would teach or how we'd do it. Well, there were some very specialized courses. You could major in the lumber industry. You could take a course in railroad accounting. In 1912, the dean of the school, Edwin Gay, took aside Melvin Copeland, who was an early hero of the school, and told him that for one section of a course called commercial organization, what became marketing, he should teach it by discussion and not by lecture. The real turning point was Wallace Donham was appointed dean in 1919. He believed in his heart that this thing called the case method was the way to go for the school, and he did a couple of things. He got Melvin Copeland to stop writing a book on marketing and instead collect a set of problems in marketing. And very quickly, Copeland gathered a whole book of often one paragraph long problems from which he'd teach. The second thing is the dean deployed the Bureau of Business Research to hire men to write cases. And the first one was General Shoe by the field agent Clinton Biddle. So we don't know for sure why the shoe industry was chosen, but I have a couple of theories. First, it's worth remembering that Boston and Massachusetts were kind of the Silicon Valley of shoemaking in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. And HBS was really very much a local enterprise at that time. The first graduating class had individuals, 3/4 of whom were from Massachusetts. A second possible reason is that HBS faculty were surprisingly familiar with the shoe industry at the time. It turns out that the very first research study done by Harvard Business School under the Bureau of Business Research was an investigation to understand the structure of the shoe retailing industry. I think HBS faculty and students would have felt quite at home with the General Shoe Company.
There is general unrest among working men because of the cost of living, which has increased 95% since 1914. Wages have not been correspondingly increased. The rule of the shop is that all piece workers are to remain at work until 10 minutes before quitting time. A whistle is blown at this time, and the employees are allowed to leave their work to wash up. The foremen report difficulty in enforcing this rule. It is observed by about 30% of the employees who did not wash up before going out. Others take 45 minutes or less from their working time.
It's really deeply, wonderfully ambiguous why the workers are leaving their positions early. It could be, as the workers say, because otherwise they wind up getting stuck in the washrooms and can't leave on time. It could be that they're upset that their wages are not keeping up with inflation, and this is their protest. It could be that the foremen aren't conveying the message to the workers to stay on the job. It could be that the piece workers are working so hard that they're exhausted before the shift ends. It could be the line is not balanced, so that some stations are out of raw material before the workday ends, so they might as well take off. It's a detective story.
We want to spend a lot of time diving
What
into
should
smart
you, the
business
chief executive,
design,
do?
figuring out how-
The students will come up with a long list of things they might do. But gradually they'd realize, or I would ask them, do you actually have the information you need in order to make a decision about what to do? Acting on the wrong root cause would cause you problems.
Managers can and should and do.
For me, the important thing in this case is that you can tackle an ambiguous situation and reverse engineer from the options available to you what questions you need to ask as a general manager to learn enough to be able to take reasonable action. We are here now nearly a century after the General Shoe Company case was first published. And you have to ask, is the case method still relevant? There are new technologies, new methods, but I think the fundamentals of the case method are still very sound. Experiences that engage students, experiences that force them to think of critically, to sort out important from unimportant facts, think for themselves, consider alternatives, listen to others, explain their views to others, make a decision. Those experiences will continue to deliver powerful learning. What I love about General Shoe is it allows students to practice a core skill of general managers. How do you go into an ambiguous situation and get to the bottom of it? That skill, the skill of figuring out a course of inquiry to choose a course of action, that skill is as relevant today as it was in 1921.